Good evening and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the first of M3 summer webinar series, although it was raining this morning in London. I'm Hannah Brown. I'm the Marketing Director at M3 in London. Our topic today is sampling, and I'll introduce our speakers shortly after a bit of quick housekeeping. So at the bottom of the screen, which will appear on the right, you'll see the chat icon. If you have any questions as we go through, feel free to ask them. Equally, if you have any technical questions, I'm well aware that I'm just talking but not actually convinced or know if anyone's talking. So if you can test the chat function and let me know that you can hear me, that'd be brilliant. We've got time for Q&As at the end, but as I said, feel free to send your questions throughout, and if it's appropriate, then we'll deal with them as we go through, or if not, at the end. We're aiming to take up no longer than about 40 minutes of your time today, so we should be aiming for about, well, 5:45 UK time and 1:45 Eastern. We'll share the recording and the slides with you via email afterwards. Right, so I'll introduce our speakers now and then hand over to them. I'm joined today by Aida, Tovar and Cedric Gallais. Aida is M3's Chief Panel Officer, overseeing the panel teams in the EU and US offices. She's worked in healthcare market research since 2009 and is passionate about maximising engagement and panel recruitment. Cedric has been with M3 since 2015 and has over 10 years of healthcare market research experience. As our sampling director, he is tasked with guaranteeing fieldwork sampling success, good topic for today, deploying key community panel metrics, including response rates, completion rates, and feasibilities. So now that I've hopefully convinced you that Aida and Cedric are absolutely the right people to lead this webinar today, let me hand over to them so they can take you through their 9.5 ways to maximise fieldwork success through effective sampling. Over to you, Aida.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. Well, welcome and thanks to everyone who has joined us today. We all know the importance of sampling for the success of a market research study, and we are pleased today to present the 9.5 ways to maximize fieldwork success. And you will see at the end why the half point is so important for this webinar. Now, because of the importance that we recognize over the sampling in the fieldwork process, we actually want to give you a little bit of background of why we are doing this webinar, what the purpose of this webinar is. Now, we look at a report from the Green Book Industry Trends, and we saw the members of the industry were asked about the perception of the future of the sample quality. The question was, will sample quality get better, stay the same, or get worse over the next few years? And what we found interesting in this research is that the inside buyers and inside suppliers have a very different perception compared to the sample suppliers. You can see that the inside buyers and suppliers, 47%, 41% of them think that the sample quality will get worse over the next 3 years. Opposite to that, the sample suppliers, 55% of them, they think that it will get better. So we can perceive here that there is perhaps a lack of communication, ways of informing between the members of the industry on what developments, what improvements have been made over the last few years in the sample quality. And that's what we want to do today through the 9.5 ways of how to maximize fieldwork success. We want to show those improvements, those new developments that are coming up in the industry on the sample quality.
Thank you, Aida. So the difference of opinions amongst the industry professionals stresses the importance of adopting the best practice when sampling for market research. This is to maintain and improve the quality of the sample. This is the reason why the first of our 9.5 ways to maximize fieldwork success we will talk about today is the importance of the best practice when sampling for market research. It is an important aspect of sampling, and we will keep referring to it when discussing the other way of maximizing of fieldwork. There are a few key points you need to keep in mind to get it right. You need to be prepared, to have a sampling plan, to keep your objective in mind at all times, such as the delivery of your project on schedule. You will also need to use resources available in order to achieve the fielding objective based on the needs of the research. It is also important to identify the risk as early as possible during the fieldwork, to have enough time to react to unforeseen situations as quickly as possible. You also need to use what you've learned from your experience and use the lesson of the past to get better in the future. You have also to realize that sometimes things can go wrong. You cannot deliver a project successfully without knowing what to expect during the fieldwork. No planning ahead could result with poor segmentation and the wrong target invited to take part in the survey. And furthermore, you might realize too late that you can't deliver the project. So the importance of the best practice leads us to the principle of sampling compliance related to the participants. Those principles are based on the respect of the participant, which must be in perfect balance between the legal aspect and the ethical aspect. The legal aspect includes data protection, confidentiality, anonymity of the respondent, and informed consent. The ethical side covers items such as the protection of the participant, the honesty of the market researcher in terms of information communicated to the respondent, and the assurance of non-promotional character of the research.
Excellent. And in relation to this compliant aspect of the market research, we have our point number 2, which is understand what the guidelines say about sampling. So in the UK, we have the BHPIA guidelines, and although they don't have very detailed information on how to complete a sample plan or how to create a sampling strategy, we can see in these guidelines that there is a good insight, they offer good advice on how to handle it, on how best we should approach the sampling strategy. So recommendations that we see from these industry bodies are things related to understand the type of respondents that we are trying to target for the project. So it is important that we know who we are inviting to the study, what we are trying to achieve with them, understand the objectives of the study that is critical for the success of the project, understand the methodology, whether that methodology is the correct one for that specific target, importance of the sample size, and this is not only relevant for the design of the research, it is also important when we are doing the fielding work. We need to have good understanding of differences that could be in the universe sizes, and we see that commonly happening when you are running a study in the US compared to a study that you could be running in Sweden or in any other market where in the Nordics or in Europe, where the sample sizes, where the universe sizes are much smaller. So we need to have clear understanding of how many respondents we can invite to achieve the objectives of the study. Now, when we look at what could go wrong when we don't look at the guidelines or we don't revise the best practices in sampling, we will end up having respondents or inviting respondents that are not required, or we might end up inviting more people than what we need. And that would lead us to have respondents losing interest in participating in market research, which of course affects the engagement of respondents. And when we poorly engage respondents, that provides questionable data. So we need to be sure and prepare well when we are revising these guidelines and use what they are offering us to the success of the study. Now, in relation to the engagement of respondents, we run a study, a survey with our panel members, asking them what were the things that frustrate them the most about market research. And we also run a study with different members of the industry where we ask whether we do enough to ensure healthcare professionals are treated appropriately. And it is interesting to see the contradictions or the different perceptions that each of the groups had about the same topic. For respondents, they consider that one of the biggest frustrations they have is being terminated after a few screening questions, the low incentive compared to the time, longer time than advertised in the invite. Now, if we compare what the perspective of the industry members is, we see that more than 80% consider that we are respecting respondents. More than 70% say that we're paying a fair remuneration. Now, again, if we see what doctors think that is frustrating, is that they are getting a lower incentive compared to the time they spend. So the reason why we wanted to present this here is to understand why it is important that we look at the perceptions that doctors, respondents, healthcare professionals have about the way that we are engaging with them, the way that we are treating them, because that will help us to prepare our engagement plan. Now, we ask as well respondents on what we could do to improve the way that we are treating them, the way that we are engaging them. And we want to have the balance of course, complying and managing the legal and ethical side of market research, which is obviously critical for the success of the study, and at the same time, encourage respondents to keep participating in future studies. So these are the recommendations or those comments that we receive from healthcare professionals on what we need to take into consideration when it comes to running our sampling, running our field work strategy. It is the reason why we're also showing this is because we will be touching throughout this presentation on all these items, because we have heard the opinions, the insights from the respondents, and that is what can help us to prepare the right sampling plan for a project. And this is when we have our point number 3, creating a plan. Because we have understood the study, we already have revised the needs of the study, and we also have taken into consideration the frustrations, the perceptions of the healthcare professionals, the needs from the client side. We can now prepare our plan. We need to revise the study needs. We need to look at the timelines we have available to deliver the study. We need to decide the volume of invitations that we are going to be sending for the study. We need to prepare the expected results that we're going to have through the fielding time. So we need to look at when we are doing the soft launch, what type of evaluation we're going to do during the soft launch, what changes are required to make sure that we are ready to full launch. And once we move into the full launch, we need to have an ongoing monitoring process and plan for us to make sure that we are on track with the expected results. And important, we need to have a contingency plan, because sometimes things could change throughout the fielding time. And what could go wrong when we don't plan ahead before the study commences? So not having a roadmap to achieve the objectives, late delivery, issues with the quality of the data, that could be the result of us not being prepared.
And so after establishing the sampling plan, our fourth way of maximizing fieldwork is to understand the role of incentive in sampling. Incentivization. The fact that we offer incentives to the respondent is such a key area in our industry. It is often misunderstood. And you need to get it right if you want to successfully deliver your project. Ephemera states that an incentive is any benefits given to encourage participation in market research study and should be, amongst other points, kept to a minimum, appropriate to the time involved, appropriate to the task. We also need to take into account the honoraria sensibility level of each respondent. Some respondents might be willing to take part in market research only for an incentive higher than others. Other point to take into account is the type of respondent. Some respondents as KOL, for example, will expect a higher level of incentive in order to complete research projects. Incentive must be fair, and it is important not to offer too high incentive either, as it could create future expectations from the participants. The incentive, as we will see later, will have an impact on the motivation of the respondent. Not setting your incentive correctly could have an impact on the quality of the data collected, the response rate, and the abandon rate. All those points are linked to the motivation of the respondents. While financial compensation remains the main primary motivator for healthcare professionals, other factors are also appealing to respondents, such as scientific interest, product awareness, and industry development. Scientific interest being mentioned by almost 60% of the respondents in a recent survey we conducted internally. And if you do not set your incentive correctly, what could go wrong is that well, as we mentioned earlier, incentive is a key factor for motivation. Another M3 internal survey shows that 53% of the respondents agree that the incentive amount they are offered is impacting the quality of their engagement and answers. 82% said that they have declined taking part in market research because the incentive was inadequate, and 86% have abandoned a MR research survey because the time involved being advertised was incorrect. So getting it wrong could have an impact on the capability to deliver the sample.
Yeah, and because incentives are so important for the success of market Fieldwork, the market research study, we decided as well to ask respondents what other rewards we could offer in addition to the cash that we already offer, knowing that incentives have a direct impact on the quality of the data, on the engagement of the respondents. It is useful for us to understand what else we could offer to them that could engage them and keep them participating in the studies that we offer. Now, we found that 37% of the respondents say that a demographic report, a summary report of the research would be something that would be valuable for them as a reward for participating in the study. 29% say that they would see benefit of having cumulative rewards, and only 12% see charitable rewards as a motivator, which that came personally as a surprise. I would have expected that healthcare professionals would be willing and donating, and that would motivate them to participate even more, but that's what we have market research to help us to understand what people think. Now, moving into our point number 5, we need to get resources ready. And this sounds like something that it's easy or it's quite obvious, but it is important to be prepared with the resources that we need based on the plan that we have already created. This is what will help us to implement the plan at the right time, with the right materials, invitations. So we need to revise what we need to achieve what we planned from the beginning. Now, we need to look at the team members that will be involved in the studies, briefing, explanation, preparation for these team members that will be working in the project, technological needs, how we're going to invite these respondents, how we're going to reach out to them. So this is important for us in addition to the creation of the plan. What can go wrong when we don't have resources ready? Well, we will end up spending more than what we planned. We will be off track with the samples plan or with the expected results, and we might end up having a late delivery of the project.
So, and our 6th point will focus on the importance of targeting the right respondent. It is important to encourage healthcare professionals to provide profiling information when joining a panel, because this will result with a better ability to segment the sample. It will improve the response rate, and by inviting the most relevant healthcare professional to take part in the research, it will result with a higher incidence rate and better experience for the participant. Failure to do so would result with a high level of unsubscribers, high abandon rate, low participation in the future research, and respondent dissatisfaction.
Excellent. So now we are ready to execute the sampling plan. So by now, we have already understood the project needs, compliance needs, we have already our plan created, we have defined the incentives of the rewards that we're going to use for the project, we have defined that profiling needs that we have for the project, and we prepared the resources that will be required for the fielding work. Now, at this stage, we are ready to go into the execution. This is the moment where we have our segmented group or target of respondents that we are going to invite. We move into the soft launch, we do evaluation, we revise the incidence rate, the length of the interview, project effects, and we check that we are on track with what we planned from the beginning. Now we move into the full launch once we are sure that we are ready, that adjustments have been made, we can start inviting more respondents and go full launch with the project. At this stage, we are monitoring the results of the study, keeping an eye on how we are performing. If we see the need of additional recruitment, extra reminders, other solutions, this is the moment that we need to do it based on that performance, based on the tracking that we are having throughout the fielding time. And the failure to execute these previous steps that we are mentioning here will lead into the failure of the study. So this is why it is important for all of us to go through all the points that we are sharing today.
Yes, and I would like to add a note about reminders, Aida. M3 historical data show that the first reminder will give overall 30% response compared to the initial email that was sent. And if we look even further, it will only get a response rate of 5% when we send a second reminder to the same sample. So sending any more reminders will not necessarily achieve more complete, but it is likely that it will be more damaging for the panel and increase the number of respondents unsubscribing. Some reminders, so reminders should be used really cautiously. Now, it is important to keep monitoring the progress of the fieldwork. And it gives you a chance to analyze any situation and take appropriate course of action. Remember that you need to plan, to execute the plan, check the progress against the plan, and take action to correct any issue. If things are going off track, you can review the situation and adjust your strategy. Think outside the box. If the plan doesn't work, do not always think about reminders. Discuss with your team on what else could be done.
Yeah, and because you are perhaps at the stage of having problems with the delivery of the project, or you are delayed with the delivery of the project, this is the moment where your contingency plan will come in place. This is when it becomes useful for you to have prepared that plan B. So when you are saying that there are issues being flagged, delays on the results that you are expecting, you can invite or you can start to implement that plan B. What can be that plan B? So it could be looking at other solutions, as you, Cedric, were mentioning before, not only reminders, but discussing with the team how else we can, what else we can do to recruit the respondents that we might be missing. And if none of those plans work, internal plans, the plan B, then we will have to move into the plan C, which is potentially external partners. And this is when we revise, deduping the respondents, look at the quarter segments that might be in the project, and set expectations on what is needed or what can be achieved.
So this leads us to our halfway to maximize fieldwork success, which is the evaluation of the final result. We should always build on our success and learn from experience, but also learn from our mistake. It is important to share what went well, so it can be reproduced in the future, but it's also important to share what went less well, so it can be improved for future research. When reporting on the result, look back at how the project went. Have we delivered the sample requested within the timeline? If not, why? What could have been done differently? Review the respondent feedback. Was there any bad feedback from the respondent? For example, any issue with links? Could this have been prevented? Review the sampling performances. As the panel underperformed, why was that? Did we have to resort to a plan C? How can this be prevented in the future? It does matter. All of this really matter because it will have an impact on the relationship you have with your panelists. It will also affect their responsiveness in the future. New joiner with bad experience will be less likely to complete other research. The universe size of the healthcare professional is limited, so it's really important to retain as many market research-friendly HCP as possible in our panel.
Yeah, and this is a constant learning process for all of us. What we wanted to show today is that the sampling quality will get better. There are improvements being made to have a better quality of samples, and the way of doing it is by implementing these 9.5 ways of maximizing fieldwork success.
Great, thanks Aida and Cedric for that. While they go through some of the questions, I'm going to talk to you about the next webinar in the summer webinar series. If you've got any questions, just send them across on the webinar chat that you can access from your control panel at the bottom. You've got the little chat icon and it will appear on the right hand side. So the topic of the next webinar, it takes place on the 10th of July at 12 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. BST, so the same time as today. And we're looking at how GDPR, we're looking at GDPR as it specifically relates to healthcare market research and fieldwork. So obviously a very hot topic and something that's quite contentious at the moment. We create the content for these webinars specifically for the sessions. So if you do have any questions or anything that you've come up against since GDPR's come into place in the last month, then give us a shout and hopefully we'll be able to cover it in the webinar. You'll get to sign up. So tomorrow you'll get a follow-up to this email, which will thank you for attending. But there'll also be a link in there so you can sign up for the GDPR webinar. There's 2 more as well that will follow in the next couple of months. And back to Aida and Cedric to go through some of the questions that we've received. Okay, so we've got a question about client lists. So when we use client lists, we find that the match rate is not as high as it used to be. What are you doing to get more physicians to participate in your panel? Probably one for Aida.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that we face often because in countries like in the US, the universe sizes are very big. So it is likely that not all the respondents that come in a list would match, or not all those respondents that are in the client list will be willing to participate in a market research study. So for that, we need to, again, look at the plan from the very beginning, because this will first require from our side to assess the feasibility on what we can achieve from that client list. And if we see that we are short in feasibility, this is when we need to look at custom recruitment solutions for us to achieve the study. So when we are looking at the plan, we need to say, this is what I can achieve through a normal email campaign. This is what I can achieve through a phone solution, mailing solution. So this will come in the plan of the recruitment even before, when we are at bidding stage, when we have received the list from the client. We need to be prepared to provide the feasibility for the client and give insight on how we are going to achieve the project. Once that comes to the fielding aspect, we need to have a preparation, a plan on custom recruitment solutions where we are not able to deliver just by sending a plain email.
So we received a question about the universe size in ex-US countries. So it is really difficult to have like really accurate figures because there is no like central data available. So basically the best way to have this information is probably to get in contact with all the doctor organization, but Aida will tell us a bit more about it.
We actually did that last year because it is a common question and we need to have it. We need to know how many oncologists we have in the UK, how many rheumatologists we have in Germany. So the local medical councils provide some of those numbers. In France, for instance, we have a CIP. They have that information. These are government organizations that can provide the accounts. So what we have done is our native speakers here from the company, they start doing this desk research and created the numbers of the universe sizes that we have outside the US. The advantage with the US, as we all know, is that we have the AMA, and that provides a very good visibility of the universe sizes. Here in Europe, in the Nordic markets, we have to go through every single market into doing desk research, getting in contact with the medical council associations in each of the markets.
Okay, and a quick follow-up to the earlier question about client lists. So as you mentioned, reminders are not that helpful if we send more reminders. That goes back to Cedric's slide earlier on. It's been our experience when using the client list that cooperation rates for those that match with the panel is not high. What strategies are in place to increase cooperation from your panel members? So I guess this goes back to engagement and the strategies for that.
Yeah, with client lists and with any studies, we need to have a very good engagement strategy with them. And again, custom recruitment solutions is what can help us to find the right way of engaging them. So yes, reminders is not a solution. After you have sent, as Cedric mentioned earlier, 2 or 3 reminders, you cannot keep expecting to have a high volume of completes. This is when you need to go on the phone and start calling these respondents. There might be other ways within the panel that you can reach out to them that is not necessarily just email, as I just mentioned, phone, text messages, and as companies, we need to be prepared not to rely only on emails, and we need to start looking at other solutions of getting in contact with the respondents, making our invites attractive, clear to them, so the response rates can be improved.
And just a question there about will we be doing any webinars on GDPR? Absolutely. It's coming up on the 10th of July, and in the follow-up to this email, you'll get a link to sign up for that one. And again, if there are any questions, then please send them in advance, and we'll see if we can cover them in the session. So we've got no more open questions at the moment. If you do have any questions, my email address is in the link, in the follow-up email that you'll receive tomorrow. As ever, get in touch with any of us, your account managers, any of the team at M3. We'll always be happy to have a chat with you on the phone about sampling or anything else. So just give us a shout. Thanks for joining us today. We look forward to seeing you again on the 10th of July and for the other webinars in the summer series. Thank you very much. Bye.